Well, here we are for another early evening tipple and crafty beer with some of our good friends of our Monaco consort. And this evening is a very, very special friend of ours, Oz Clarke, who's a wine specialist, a great writer, and a TV personality, and has been known for all sorts of things. But from our point of view, we know him as a colleague and somebody who's found ways to link up alcohol and music in a way which people buy tickets to experience. And it certainly taught me a lot. So Oz, thank you so much for giving us your time and taking the time to talk to us in our festival week, when we should have had an Albert Hall concert, but alas, it couldn't be. So we're very grateful. So tell me, this is 1 minute past 6. It's time for something. What are you about to drink? What is your early evening tipple?
You see, thank you very much for talking to me, Christopher, because in this lockdown world, I crave people like you suddenly appearing on a screen and saying, I've been drinking for hours, haven't you started yet? I haven't started yet. It's 1 minute past 6 and I'm going to. And in your honor, I'm going to drink that.
Julian, oh my word. Right, okay. I don't have anything like that.
How much closer do you want it to be?
That's perfect. We can see that.
That I suspect, because I know you expect me, instead of just saying I'm going to have a pint of the locally brewed beer,
yeah,
hand pulled in my local pub by a great beery, sweaty landlord, and loving the foam lovingly dripping down the side of the glass. That's what I really like. Do you know the drink I miss most? A pint of local beer. I mean, I'd even go to the pub in your local village, and I would take you in there and say, this pint, the time we go to that pub in your local village, the first pint we have will possibly be one of the greatest drinks I've had in my life. Do I miss beer? Well, no, I've got beer. Do I miss wine? No, I've got wine. Do I miss cider? I've got all that. It's the fact of going to the English pub and having it drawn there and seeing the level rise in the glass and seeing the foam go over the top, and then thinking to myself, you know how you start the first time you have your first pint in that pub and you look at it and you lick your lips in a ridiculously cliched way.
Yeah.
In goes your nose, and a little bit of foam probably gets stuck on the end of your nose, and you take a draft, and a drink has never tasted better than that. Not a £1,000 bottle of Bordeaux.
So are you going to open that very, very fine Bordeaux that you've got in the left hand?
Yes. Well, again, the wonderful thing, you are an excuse. I mean, in fact, since I met you, Christopher, you've been one of the great excuses of my life.
Really? I didn't actually start drinking Oz until I met you. And I've experienced some of the finest wines, historical wines from your past, where there's always a story attached, where you've bought wine from some dodgy geezer in a car park at Oxford University back in 1970, which you've kept. And I remember, I will never forget that bottle of 1955. What was it? It's on my windowsill, actually, over there.
Got it. Where it got to. That's Obaï.
That's it, yes.
It's a wonderful property just outside Bordeaux, one of the oldest properties in Bordeaux.
Not many people actually know that you started out as a cathedral chorister at Canterbury Cathedral, and then subsequently in the Monteverdi Choir, and then went on to the West End. And I remember 5 years ago sitting with you and Towers, reminiscing about your past and being quite fascinated as to what you'd done. You'd taken a very similar journey to Will Towers, to the Monteverdi Choir. He didn't do the West End, he went into the Royal Opera House instead. But you performed in Superman the movie, a film that consumes my boyhood. And you were one of the baddies on the boat that he picked up and dumped outside the police station. And that turned my world upside down. And then we found it and we watched it. And you had hair. It was brilliant. It was wonderful. So come on, open the wine. Open the wine.
Okay, but of all the things you do, you think that's just a little part like that. But point is, I wasn't the 6th or the 10th or the 2nd person arrested. I was the first person ever arrested by Christopher Reeve in the first Superman film, and that's what actually allows me to be the answer in a pub quiz.
That's a good. All in one piece. Yes.
This wine is 35 years old, and the cork is as tight and as fresh and as beautiful as it was 30 years ago. Lovely, lovely, firm cork stuck in the neck of that bottle. So I'm going to just pour this a little bit, Christopher. I'm not. Shall I taste it or shall I drink it?
What
What are you drinking, dear? Oh, yeah. I've just seen.
That tastes a bit better in here, actually.
Well, I'm going to put you to shame.
So, I feel a bit less ashamed now.
Right out of a teacup. The first note is that very slightly sort of undergrowthy thing, which is sort of like autumn leaves. You know, when you're in November, when the leaves have gone brown and they've dropped, but you're out in the woods and you've gone for a Sunday morning walk, and the leaves are becoming a sort of sludgy paste underneath your feet. That's the first smell I got on that, which makes sense because it is 35 years old. So it's a property called Chateau Lalande Bory, and it's from a wonderful year, 1985, which was a really ripe year, made quite a lot of wine. The Merlot grape was important in Bordeaux in 1985. Everyone says, oh, Merlot grape doesn't age very well. Well, I'm here to tell you that the Merlot grape ages absolutely brilliantly. So this will be a mixture of Merlot grape and Cabernet Sauvignon grape. So here we go.
Go on, and whilst you're doing that, I love that expression when you said, when Julie Goulden said, it reminds me of the tar from the inside of a sumo wrestler's thigh. And you just said, quite rightly, how do you know that? So anyway, have I just ruined that first mouthful for you?
You ruined the first mouthful because it's immediately brought back that moment, because Julie Goulden was a fantastic woman to work with. Batty and full of life and full of imagination, a really tremendous sort of television communicator. But she always used to come out with these ideas absolutely on the top of her head. The kind of things that she liked to talk about were babies' bottoms. Now, I was an unmarried single man, no knowledge of babies' bottoms or nappies at all. She seemed to regard a wine that tasted of nappies as something which was close to perfection. She thought that the bottom of a hamster's cage was something ambrosial. I didn't own a hamster. I did not want to own a hamster. I never had been near a hamster. That obviously half of the population of the country did know what she was talking about.
You know, I'm quite fascinated as being a cathedral chorister in the 1960s. You know,
head chorister, Decani side.
Okay, so I just wonder. You know, I was a chorister of as a parish church choir, not a cathedral choir, but we did sing in cathedrals, and you know, that discipline, that daily tradition, that daily virtue of keeping that 500, 600 years of this amazing music alive on a daily basis. I mean, what are the key memories that you have from that? And what do you think it was about being a cathedral chorister that built you in the same way that, is it Andrew Strutt, who's the cricketer from St Paul's Cathedral?
Andrew Strutt.
Yeah, who went on to go and score, you know, that century that won England, the whatever it was 2 years ago. And he said the one thing that gave me the discipline and taught me everything I needed to know to be the cricketer I am was being a chorister at St Paul's Cathedral. Are there things about your upbringing as being part of that choir that built you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure there were. I remember when, because I didn't go to school till I was about 5 or 6. I just hung around with my dog Chunky and my mum. And so I'm not sure I was able to speak actually until I was 5 or 6. I think the word Chunky was about all I was able to say. So, but we lived in the country, and I had a blissful time just running around in the marshes, running around in the woods. Didn't have many friends, didn't need them. Had Chunky and had the countryside. And I must admit, I was somebody who wasn't being challenged. I was just living a perfect childhood. And my father eventually sort of said, I think the boy needs to go to school. He said, well, it's okay, because we've got you an interview at the choir school as well. And I went to the choir school, and they started saying, okay, can you sing the third note in this chord, and can you sing the fifth note in this chord, and can you sight read this? And I just thought, wow, that was at the very first moment I suddenly saw challenge, discipline, learning something really special. And when they came back and said, do you want to come to choir school? And my dad said, well, which do you want to do? I said, choir school, Daddy, choir school. Choir school, it's a serious school. Now, if I'd gone to the junior school at King's, I might have learned how to do maths and physics and chemistry, frankly, which I've suffered from ever since. But going to the choir school my father knew it. He said, this is really special. This is something that you will learn. Not only, he was a very devout Christian. He said, not only was he delighted that I would be at Canterbury Cathedral and surrounded by that sort of Christianity for 5 years, as it happened for 10 years of my life, because I did go to King's Canterbury afterwards, like so many of the musicians from the choir school went to King's afterwards. But the mixture of the discipline every single morning, the 8:40 choir practice. In 5 years, I was late for it once because the level crossing at the local village had jammed and we couldn't get the car across the level crossing. And my father was so upset by this that he came with me to say to Alan Wicks, the conductor, I am really sorry, it's my fault that this boy is late, because the discipline was absolute. But then someone like, and this is something that you understand, Christopher,
well,
Alan Wicks's choir practice wasn't a frightening place, except for the fact that he would always pick you to sing something when you weren't quite ready. So he absolutely understood the dynamics of all the different boys, but he made it fantastic fun.
But in terms of just life discipline and mutual respect, and being part of that team, it's something that just translates to any choir. But certainly from my point of view, I've been working with you for 6 years now, and you've not been late for a single rehearsal. If you were ever less than an hour early, in your head, you're late. And that is such an important discipline. There are so many singers who have quite short careers because they try and cram everything into their days and put too much in and cut the travel down to the fine line, and then end up just being late after late again and again and again. And it's just intolerable. And from a director's point of view, it's not just that it disrupts your rehearsal, it's totally disrespectful to everybody around you, and it starts everything off on bad footing. Obviously, every now and again, somebody's late, but it's such an important discipline. And I'm totally with you on that.
Because you just could not be late for your 8:40 choir practice. You just couldn't. And the way that you soaked up that knowledge, and you soaked up the knowledge of Bird and Tallis and Gibbons, and then you moved on to the intricacies of people like Bach, and then the glories, to me as a romantic, of just the occasional bit of Schubert you might get, or a tiny bit of Parry, or Stanford in B flat. I mean, even the most square wheel musicians loved Stanford in B flat. As I'm sure that every single choir boy in Britain likes Stanford in B flat, but the way that you soaked all that stuff up, and it's still there. And what's lovely about the cathedral experience, the chorister experiences, that as I get older, I've come back to that kind of great music with an absolute passion, which is just as great as it was when I was 9 or 10.
So this extraordinary start that you had in your life fed you into the second best university in England, and then
I didn't get in there. I had to go to the best one, which is a pity.
and then from there you joined the Monteverdi Choir, and that the Monteverdi Choir, the work of John Eliot Gardiner, has been hugely influential to me. His recordings are absolutely fabulous, and he interprets Baroque music especially like no other, and he's not afraid to do things and break rules that others put in place because it's their interpretation of a doctrine which is 400 years old, which frankly we're just guessing. But you were there in the choir very early on in its day. It must have been incredibly exciting, just seeing this extraordinary beast evolve, and where Sir John must have been trying out lots of new ideas. And what was it? What did it feel like? And I know he's got a little reputation for getting a bit cross with some of these musicians now, but what was it like back then? It must have been incredibly exciting.
Well, it was fantastic because I was never good enough for him to get angry at me. I wasn't a regular in the Monteverdi Choir. I think he used to get me in for when he felt like someone to give him a bit of amusement and someone to have a good laugh at or with. Yeah. You called him Sir John. I'm not sure I've ever heard him called Sir John. How exciting. But it all came from Canterbury, and then the King's Canterbury, where there's a fantastic guy called Edred Wright, who was the choir master there. I then went up to Oxford, and I got into the Schola Cantorum. And in a funny way, getting into the Schola Cantorum was which is a fantastic a cappella choir in Oxford. I would say the best student choir in the whole history of the universe, as I'm sure you would entirely agree as a person from that market town over towards Norwich. But that led me to meet people, and to meet people like Neville Marriner, for instance, because I was in the Academy of St. Martin's choir.
Really?
Or the Monteverdi, because by the time I got into work a bit with the Monteverdi, I was singing West End shows. I mean, it just showed John Elliott, because I get on very well with John Elliott. He's always, I must admit, I've always found him absolutely delightful. I've never felt the rough side of his tongue. I suspect because it's not worth it, because the things he was making those wonderful singers do, I simply couldn't do them, because I would be spending 6 days a week, say, singing Sweeney Todd in Drury Lane, or doing General Perron in Evita or something in the West End. So that was where my voice was. And of course, all the Monteverdi choir singers, their voice would be in the Monteverdi position. My voice would be filling 2,000, trying to fill a theatre of 2,000 people with some Andrew Lloyd Webber song. And I would come down, and honestly, you could see the old lags at the Monteverdi saying, "Okay, here's Oz. It might be a good session today."
So you then went, you worked for the BBC for many years, both on BBC One and BBC Two. You did that extraordinary series with James May, where you taught somebody who knew nothing about wine. That's another conversation entirely. And then you're now obviously on ITV every Saturday morning with James Martin. But how was it you worked for a Monaco consort? I can't remember exactly how it came about.
I remember exactly the week before, because I was doing a Schola Cantorum, the 50th anniversary of the foundation of the Schola Cantorum or something. We were doing this wonderful concert in Oxford, and I fell in with some really bad boys. I fell in with Jeremy Summerlee, who you know well, who used to run the Schola Cantorum at Oxford, and Jamie Burton, who was in, I think, maybe his last year or two running the Schola Cantorum. And we ended up in a pub called, I think, Half Moon, past Magdalen Bridge, which obviously opening and closing times were not a matter of great importance to the publican. And 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, we were still hard at it. Well, you know Jeremy, and so do I, and he knows me. And we started going on about why didn't the BBC ever do music with wine? And I said, well, several times we had gone towards doing it, and it had always been with light entertainment. And it'd always been saying, okay, well, there are lots of good drinking songs, and we can then throw in some good jokes, and you can do those. And I kept thinking, drinking songs are some of the worst pieces ever written by some of the greatest composers in the world. Some of the worst things they ever wrote were the drinking songs, with a couple of exceptions. And I just thought the whole thing was going to be, rumpety, 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 bum, here's another flagon of ale, all this kind of stuff. And I just thought I wasn't really very interested. But Jamie and Jeremy said it doesn't have to be like that at all. You can actually, the great world, the strands of the fact of alcohol's influence in music doesn't have to be about silly drinking songs. Some of the most fabulous music ever written was probably heavily under the influence of alcohol. And remember, the next day I wandered off to London, wondering where I lived, what my name was, whether I was married, and managed to get the answers over the next day or two to all those questions. And that was the week when you rang up. Oh, yeah. And you rang up. And I had just said to myself, gosh, I'd love to do that music and wine thing, but I'm not sure. I'm in a comfort zone here of working with James May. Working with James May is not much of a comfort zone, I can tell you. But by the way, he's a wonderful musician. I don't know whether people know that. He's got a degree in music, and he's a great harpsichordist. You should I just thought you should go and have a lesson or two. But I went back to London, and I got this message from my agent saying there's this strange oafish kind of character called Christopher, who's wondering whether you would be interested in getting together about a thing with classical music and wine. And I just thought, that's what we were talking about 2 o'clock in the morning about 5 days ago. And you must have been talking to the mighty and the wonderful and the brilliant Will Towers about exactly the same thing at exactly the same time as me. But if you hadn't made that call, I know that I would have hummed and hard and hummed and hard and hummed and hard, and Jeremy would have gone off and done something else, and Jamie ended up going to America to run the choral stuff at the Boston Pops, and it wouldn't have been done.
So that leads me on to the next thing I was going to ask you. Is that I remember the first time I visited your cellar when we were doing our script writing, and I was gobsmacked. You showed me this one side at which you had many, many thousands of bottles of wine, and I'd never seen as much wine as that. And you said, "That's not it all." And you opened this other door, and there we were with this colossal amount of wine. It must have been 4,000 bottles of wine. Obviously, we've been in lockdown now for 3 months. Do you have any left?
Yes, I counted it yesterday. I've got 296 bottles left.
I don't believe you.
I've been averaging about 24 bottles a day for the last 3 months.
I think that's what people don't realise about you. You don't actually really drink that much, and that really surprised me.
I do with you.
Well, yeah, we have our moments. You know, obviously, you went to Oxford because Cambridge must have been full at the time.
I think I couldn't actually find out where Cambridge was. Somebody said they thought it was in Massachusetts.
It apparently was. It still is. So,
did anyone learn anything there? They said, "There's no, you don't go there to learn. You go to punt." So I thought, well, I'd rather learn something and punt from the right end. And by the way, I am the holder of the Oxford-Cambridge long-distance punting record, not been broken to this day. I was the first person ever.
Only existed.
45 minutes. No one's ever broken 45 minutes for the long-distance course.
So to round this off, Oz, a little quick fire round for you. I'll ask you, I know how you like to procrastinate and go into details, but I'm asking for a one-word answer now, Oz.
One word?
Just one word, or maybe two.
One word is 2 words anyway.
So, first one, Oxford or Cambridge?
I mean, this is a question. That's not a question. It's a statement. Statement is quite clearly Oxford.
Okay, next one. Now, this will be interesting. I'm not sure you're going to say this here. Bach or Bird?
Oh, God. Now, if it weren't for the Matthew Passion,
yeah,
I would say Bird. Because I love Bird, and Bird was a really important part of my growing up. But what was probably an even more important part of my growing up was the Easter Passion that at Canterbury Cathedral, in the nave of Canterbury Cathedral, that we did every year, the Matthew Passion. So I know that Bach only drank about once every 4 years, and had the only time he ever got into a drunken scuffle was with a bassoonist. I mean, well, I'm not surprised. It's going to be Bach because of the Matthew Passion.
Okay, I knew you wouldn't be able to give a one-word answer there, but you're right. It's interesting that all the people we've interviewed this week have actually introduced the Matthew Passion into their answer on that.
I think Bird has written some wonderful stuff, and I sometimes get more excited probably by Bird than Bach, but Matthew Passion does it for me.
Okay, here's a good one. Okay, you're allowed 2 words or possibly 3 here. Craft ale or Great British Beer?
So this is an emotional thing. I love craft ale from every country in the world. I'm thrilled by what's going on, but actually, a great British pint in a great British pub with some great British friends.
Yeah, totally. We will have soon. Now, next one: Canterbury Cathedral or York Minster?
I didn't think York had a cathedral. It's got a minster, has it? What is a minster? A mincer. It's a mincer. Oh yes, of course. York's very famous for pork pies, so I'd understand why they need a mincer. Canterbury has a cathedral, the greatest cathedral in the world. It's 5'8" or 5'9'7". That's where my school started. 5'9'7", possibly the oldest school in the world.
I think I might possibly choose York Minster on that one. Okay, next one: Bordeaux or Burgundy? I know the answer to this.
Not the top of it.
Oz, concentrate now. Bordeaux or Burgundy?
Interesting. Bordeaux.
Yeah.
Burgundy is more trendy at the moment, but wine is where you've come from as well as where you are. And I have come to my love of wine through the fields of Bordeaux rather than the fields of Burgundy.
Speaking of which, how is that tasting now? It's been open for half an hour.
There's a lot more fruit now. Of course, it's only 35 years old, much the same as you. And it's now, now instead of that sort of leafy thing, there's a lovely sweetness. It's like slightly old black cherry jam or slightly old black currants. It hasn't got a gorgeous fresh lift to it, but at 35 years old it's now becoming sweet. The oxygen, the air has got to it. It's taken that slightly savory quality away. Beautifully sweet, but it's the sweetness. It's a bit like if you had a spinster aunt who had thought you were coming to tea on Tuesday and had made the jam tarts, and you didn't turn up till Thursday, so she'd left them in the pantry for an extra 2 days. That sort of jam.
All right, here's another one. Yoga or Pilates?
Are those fermented milk products?
Assuming they're your regular forms of exercise, Oz.
Yoga or Pilates, I would have said it's not what my right arm's for.
Okay, and finally, golf or wine? And this is going to be the hardest one for you to answer.
In the lockdown, if I had to say, do you want to spend today doing golf or wine? I choose golf.
Yeah.
I choose golf. But there'll be a wonderful pint of great British beer.
So anyway, Oz Clarke, thank you so much for giving us your time. I know that the reason you're doing so is because we're raising money this week for our new work with those suffering from dementia, and where we're creating very specialist singing workshops for them. And we're going to be delivering that, first of all, virtually with some very specialist technology, and in the future we're going to be rolling that out face to face as and when we're permitted. But your support will mean that people will, I'm sure, give generously to this. And at the bottom of the screen here, there'll be some sort of link for you to click on and be as generous as you can. So,
it's such an important movement, Christopher, because I think that music and the togetherness and the reawakening of memories from music is probably more important for Alzheimer's than almost any drug that's been invented.
And it's been proved. So all we are doing is doing our duty, and we're giving the musicians a relevance in this strange and unusual world we now exist in. So there are 2 winners to this, and it can only get better. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of that bottle. I hope you've got somebody to share it with, and we'll see
you.
Yeah, pop it in the post.
I shall leave a picture up of you on my desk and then we say, cheers, Christopher, as I finish it off. Thanks, Christopher.